Both the scientific community and the general public have hoped that stem cell-based technologies could someday revolutionize the treatment of disease. Although the FDA has approved only a handful of treatments involving stem cells, clinics have taken advantage of ambiguous regulations to offer unproven therapies for a wide range of conditions. I'm Stephen Morrissey, managing editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, and I'm talking with Hermes Taylor-Weiner from the Karolinska Institute and the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Taylor-Weiner has co-authored a perspective article about unlicensed stem cell clinics and why they've been allowed to continue selling questionable therapies. Dr. Taylor-Weiner, one concern you raised in your article is that the activities of these unlicensed clinics could hinder legitimate advances in stem cell science. In what areas is there the most potential for stem cell-based technologies?
I think there are several avenues of research currently using stem cell technologies that could potentially benefit patients. One is using the types of stem cells that these clinics are using, which are adult stem cells. And in my laboratory for my PhD and many other laboratories around the country, they use these types of adult stem cells for trying to discover treatments for a variety of diseases. And then there's a whole other avenue of research that uses pluripotent or embryonic type stem cells. And many scientists are interested in developing these types of cells for drug screening and then eventually, at one point, for regenerative therapy.
You write in your article that most of the therapies offered by these unlicensed stem cell clinics use adipose-derived stem cells that are packaged as a product called stromal vascular fraction, SVF. Has SVF been tested in any clinical trials, or is it currently under investigation?
No, there are no FDA-approved clinical trials using SVF. The clinics themselves package their product in the form of human experimentation. They claim that what they're doing is like a clinical trial. But it's important to note that none of these clinics are running FDA-approved clinical trials, and the FDA has not done any of their own clinical trials to show that SVF is safe or effective for the treatment of any disease.
What are the biologic theories, the purported mechanisms of action underlying the use of SVF?
There are two. One is that SVF contains an adult stem cell which is known to be multipotent, meaning it can become many different types of cells. And it's important to note that this multipotency has been shown primarily in the laboratory, where they've shown that these cells can become many mesenchymal-type tissues, such as bone and cartilage and sometimes muscle. And so one theory is that when these cells are transplanted to the patient, either intravenously or directly into the tissue, the theory is that these cells would then differentiate into that specific type of cell for whatever tissue they're supposed to regenerate, and thereby replace the damaged or diseased cells. The other potential mechanism of action is immunomodulation, meaning changing the immune system. And so there's some evidence to suggest in vitro, mostly animal work, that these cells have the ability to modulate the inflammatory response of the immune system. And so another potential avenue by which these cells could be effective is by changing the way the body's immune system reacts to disease.
You write in your article that one of the problems with regulating stem cell clinics is that so-called 361 biologic products don't require strict oversight, and they're loosely defined. Has that caused trouble for the FDA with any products other than SVF?
Not to my knowledge, and I think that a lot of these rules were written in a time when treatments and drugs were always what we classically think of as drugs, which are chemicals that are developed by the pharmaceutical industry. And the FDA, many of their rules are really well suited for regulating those types of treatment. But now we've reached an age where biologics are becoming the new form of treatments, or another alternative to kind of classic pharmaceuticals. And so really the stem cells, I think, is just the beginning of a whole series of treatments that will require the FDA to update its regulations in order to properly regulate.
Despite those perhaps outdated regulations, has the FDA taken action against any of these stem cell clinics?
Yes, so they've issued warning letters and cease and desist orders to some clinics, but certainly not enough to dissuade the majority of clinics to continue operation. And even today, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these clinics in operation in the United States. And then recently, just in this last year, the FDA released draft guidance for industry, which really specifically call out SVF, this stromal vascular fraction, this stem cell product that the clinics are selling, and calls it out as a product that would not qualify as a 361 product, that is subject to strict regulation.
So once that draft guidance is finalized, do you think that these unlicensed clinics will be forced to shut down, or will some of them actually be able to pass muster under a stricter regulatory system?
It's possible that some treatments using SVF might pass muster and qualify as legitimate 361 products, but the vast majority of these will not. The guidelines for qualifying under the 361 product are rather strict, as they should be, and many of the types of treatments that these clinics are offering, I would say the vast majority will not qualify.
Finally, is there anything that individual physicians can do to be protecting their patients from the possible harms associated with these unproven therapies?
I think physicians need to talk to their patients about what types of evidence there is for these types of treatments. In reality, there isn't any clinical data to suggest that these treatments are safe or effective. And in many cases, the patients are passing up more legitimate evidence-based therapies in order to try this type of more experimental approach. So I think if physicians are just upfront and can talk to their patients about how the drug approval process works in the United States and what kinds of mechanisms there are to protect patients, and to basically explain that these stem cell clinics operate outside of that framework.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor-Weiner.